Hi, my name is Kathleen and this is my Happy Stamping Place. I'm going to be demonstrating the 2 cards for my monthly October 2023 Hybrid Stamp Club. Feel free to follow along with me. My Hybrid Stamp Club is just like it suggests. I have in-person people who come to my house and meet and do make and takes with me in person. And I also have virtual people who live either locally who can't make the stamp club or who live somewhere else in the US and want to play along as well. So for those people, I send make and take packets, and then I do this demonstration so that you can make the cards as well. And I send a PDF with supplies and some instructions and pictures of the projects so that you could remake them later. So if that sounds good to you and you want more information, just let me know. Send me a message and I'd be happy to give you more information. But without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera down and we're going to get started on the projects. Here we go. All right, and I have a blog. It's myhappyplace.typepad.com. You can visit me there. And I usually post the projects on there, so you'll be able to see the pictures there of what we're making today. So first I'll show you the first card that we're making. It's this cute little owl card with a little flap on the front. I have just a card front, like it doesn't open here, it just opens there. You could always make a cardstock base if you wanted to that opens here as well. I just chose to do it a little simpler for this project. So those of you who have the make and take packets, you can pull out the one that looks like this. And I wanted to point out, for this card, you have 2 pieces of basic white. And they're similar in size, but one is slightly smaller than the other. It's slightly shorter than the other. Make sure that you're setting this one aside and using this one as your card base. Otherwise, it's going to mess you up in your project later. So the first thing you can do is adhere your big sheet of designer paper down onto this base. You can choose whichever side you want. I've done a card with each design. So this time I'm going to use this as the backdrop. So you can go ahead and adhere that down. This is Something Eclectic Papers. It is a really big pack of paper in the Stampin' Up! Catalog. It really, I don't know, I grab it again and again because it has so many different designs that you can just make so many different projects, and you can get lots of different looks from it. I want to give you the right name for it. So it is not, yeah, here it is. Delightfully Eclectic. It's on page 129 of the Stampin' Up! Catalog, so you can see it there. So anyway, that's what I'm using. Here is the base, and then I'm going to take, this is the other piece of basic white cardstock that was just a little bit smaller. So this we're going to score at 2 inches along the long side. So I'm going to pull in my paper cutter for that. Now the Stampin' Up! Paper cutter comes with a cutting blade and a score blade. The cutting blade, I'm just going to park up here. It's nice, you can just park it out of your way. And it's the lighter color that is your score blade. So I'm going to score that, like I said, at 2 inches along this long edge. And then I'm going to take my bone folder and just help get a little bit crisper edge that way by burnishing it. And that is your front fold flap. Next, you're going to take your pieces of designer paper. This is the flip side of this pattern, so it coordinates wonderfully with that. So I'm going to put the larger piece, adhere that on the inside. This is cut down just a 1/4 inch smaller than the inside part. And then the folded front flap, we'll put this other piece of designer paper. We'll place that down here. centered on that flap. Okay, and next I'm going to do some stamping. And for this card, I'm using the Bird's Eye View, my current favorite stamp set. Of course, that changes on the regular, but right now I'm really enjoying this one. So this one's fun. It's got 5 different birds and then a couple of different oversized eyeglasses you can stamp on them. They can sit on a stamp of books or a stack of books. They can sit on a tree branch, and there's some leaves you can put on the tree branch. And they can also hold a balloon. So lots of fun options there. Plus they're line art image, so I can color them in. And that's one of my favorite things to do. Is I love to color. Ever since I was a little girl, I've loved to color. So we're going to do that with this one. So I'm going to pull out, and I've already got this loaded on a block. It's this owl image. And I'm going to stamp it on some basic white. Now this is a photopolymer stamp, the clear stamp. So I like to use a foam pad underneath when I'm stamping because there's no cushion or give on it, and you get a better stamped image that way. So I'm taking my Tuxedo Black Memento ink and dabbing that around and stamping it down. And next I want to also do in the same, I'm going to be die cutting this with a circle, but in that same size circle, I'm going to be doing a greeting. But first, let me put some nice big oversized glasses on this guy. These are round Harry Potter-ish looking glasses, so that just really gives it a fun touch of whimsy. And then set that aside and get another scrap of basic white. And for this one, we are going to do a happy birthday. And this is from my go-to greeting set. And this one is rubber, a red, unmounted rubber stamp. Now, for this, I don't need that cushion underneath because there's a cushion built in to the rubber stamps. So just wanted to point that out. So go ahead and stamp that down. Okay, so I can put this ink away. Next, I want to die cut it with a circle from, this is the Stylish Shapes. Make sure I get the right size circle. I don't think I already had it out. It's lying around on my tabletop here somewhere. Just need to find it. And I'll bring my Stampin' die cut and emboss machine in and die cut these. Here's the circle. It's got some stitches built into it, so it's more than just a simple basic circle. All right, so I'm just going to set aside my grid paper because if that's underneath my die cut machine, it slides around a little bit. So I'm going to bring this in and do my sandwich. All of our die cuts use the same sandwich, and it also shows a picture of it on the plate here, so you don't have to remember it by heart. But so it tells you use your base plate 1, next your plate 2, next your plate 3. These are pretty well worn, but they still work. So a plate 3. Next, I'm going to put one of my images down and the circle so that I can center it. I'm using mounting tape to hold that down so that it doesn't move around. That's currently my favorite way to make sure things don't slide around on me. I'll show you that product in a minute and why I like it. Okay, so there's that, and then I also need to die cut the greeting as well. So let's just pop this one out and get my greeting, roll that up. And I want my greeting a little bit higher on the circle, so I'm loading it that way. I forgot to say, then you put your other base plate 3 on top to complete your sandwich for die cutting. Just send that through. You hear that little click, and that's normal. No need to be concerned about that. Then I can just reuse this tape. So I'm all about reusing. I like to be able to do that. All right, so I can put this away for now. And I'll bring back in my grid paper so we can finish our card. All right, and before, I always want to make sure I put away my die so that doesn't go missing on me. Okay, now I get to color this fun bird. And to do that, I'm going to use Stampin' Blends, which is a very fun way to color. I'll start out with just a little bit of pumpkin pie on his little tiny beak. Now the Stampin' Blends have a fine point and a brush tip that's more like a paintbrush. So depending upon the size of the surface you're coloring, you can use one or the other. Next, I want to use the Ivory Stampin' Blend to color in his tummy. The alcohol markers just are very smooth and give you a nice colored image without like the streaks and start points of regular markers. Next up, I'm going to do his wings, and I'm using Daffodil Delight. So it comes in a set of 2, light and dark daffodils. So I like to start out with the light first. Then I'll come in and shade a little bit with some dark. And I'm using the brush tip for this because I have a little bit larger surface area to work with. So just along the edges of his wings, I'm putting in some darker Daffodil Delight. And then I'm going to go back in with my lighter and kind of blend those together so they're not so it just blends a little nicer. Next up, I am going to take the light crumb cake and the dark crumb cake, but also this is SU 500. It's a brown, but on its own it seemed pretty dark to me. So what I'm going to do is start out with my crumb cake light and just color in this guy up here. And I also want to point out, don't be afraid to not just stick with the color like light and dark daffodil light. You could mix in pumpkin pie with that as well. Like you can blend in other colors pretty readily, so don't be afraid to do that. Next, I'm going to take the SU 500 and just give him some more color on the edges and a little bit more on that side. And I'll pull in my dark crumb cake and start to try to blend that in a little. So that's got it a lot darker. Then I'm just going to kind of blend that all together with the light crumb cake again. Kind of swirl that around and get that going. Okay, and then I don't know if you can see, but I colored a little outside the lines on the wings. So this is something I highly recommend that you have in your toolkit, and that is the Color Lifter. You can use this like if you go out of the lines like I just did. You can just kind of color a little bit along there and it kind of lifts that color out. I just want to caution you to not go too much of a heavy hand with that, because you can make your other colors bleed out, because this is alcohol in here and it could make that do that. So you want to be a little careful of that. You also, like if you find an area that you want to lighten up a little bit, you can just take your Color Lifter to that and it removes some color. You can kind of see that on my owl here. You could also highlight an area, like let's say you colored in an apple and then you went back and you wanted to kind of just do a little highlight on one side, you could do that as well. So a lot of different options there. So my bird is done coloring. I'm now going to mount him on a larger circle from the Stylish Shapes, and this is cut in the Bubble Bath color. It's a newer color from the catalog that came out in May. And see how that's going to layer there. But I want him popped up a little bit, so I'm going to put him on dimensionals. I love to pop things up. I think giving it dimension always elevates in more ways than one your project. just remove the backings here. Okay. All right, now center it on that circle. And let's put this on our fold. Excuse me. Okay, so now when you're adhering this, you only want to adhere it on this side because it's going to overlap that flap a little bit. You don't want any adhesive here. It's going to stick and your card won't open. So you don't want that. So I'm going to put just my adhesive on this half of the circle, the left half. And kind of center it a little bit upper part of the card, but centered on the sides. And then my greeting, I'm going to adhere inside. Now this circle is smaller than the bubble back, but the same as the main image. So it'll be hidden when the card is closed. But I'm going to center it also kind of upper top. So there's that fun little fold there. And then all I need to do is mount it on my card front like that. And I'll center it on here from side to side and top to bottom, just eyeballing it. And there you go. Super cute and simple, huh? You could always embellish it any way you want in addition to this, but this is your finished card. So that's card 1. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to go into our next card and just put a few of my pieces away so they're not in our way. And I should probably clean my stamps. That's best practice here. I've got my Stampin' Scrub. I like to spritz a little water as well as the Stampin' Mist. And then take my stamps to it. This is my wash side and this is my dry side. Here's the little glasses. And those are ready to put away in their stand case, which I will do so we don't lose track of those. I don't know about you, but my crafting surface can quickly get out of hand when I start pulling things out and creating. So I try to tidy it up when I can so that it doesn't get too out of control. I think, yep, those are all those. I really like, this is, I can't remember how long ago, maybe about a year, Stampin' Up! Started this where they printed all the images in the stamps inside of your case. And then when you're putting your stamps away, you can place them over that, and then you'll know that all your stamps are here and accounted for and in their spot. So I really appreciate that. That's been a great help. So let's get these blocks out of the way and get ready for our next card. Okay. All right, so first I'm going to show you what this second card looks like. This is a kind of a locking latch card. The base is a gatefold card, and then there is a mechanism that we'll be making that you can place on here. It's a really easy mechanism, a really pretty easy card once you figure out the mechanism part. And that goes on here. And once it's on, it latches pretty good, but you can open it either like this, like you would kind of a normal card, or you can lift this whole thing off. So lots really fun options. So let me get this back on and we'll get started on this card. For this one, I'm using the Warmest Heart bundle. Loving this thermos, and we're going to use a technique called paper piecing. It's a really easy technique, but very effective. And I found a card on Pinterest that I really liked, so that's where I got the patterns of the thermos idea, but then I made my own version, my own card with this technique. So that's always a good starting point. You can go to Pinterest and find whatever stamp set you're working with, or a layout you like, or color scheme, and kind of launch your project from there. So I've got the thermos loaded on a block already and the greeting. So for this one, we're going to stamp on a couple pieces of designer paper, which I've already done. And let me share with you the name of this. Oh, actually, I have the whole pack here, so I'll just give you a quick look through it. This is called Let's Go Fishing. There's a whole bundle with this, with stamp sets, maybe dies, can't remember. But this paper, just loving the colors on this. Even if you didn't have a fisherman in your life, the other side of the designer paper has these really pleasing patterns. So lots of great colors and neutrals in here. So that's what that looks like. So we're using the designer paper from here. So what I did was I went ahead and did this part already. I stamped a thermos and then die cut it on 2 of the designer pieces from that pack. And then I'm stamping again, once on Very Vanilla, but I'll do another one on Mossy Meadow so that I can change the color of the cap. Okay, so I already stamped with, again, the Tuxedo Black Memento ink, and I stamped just the cap part of it, or a little bit more than the cap part of it. Now I'm going to die cut that out. And while I have my die cut and emboss machine out, I'm also going to do the embossing on these 2 early espresso panels. So we'll try to be efficient with that. Get this out of my way. Bring my machine back in. And temporarily get rid of my grid paper. All right. First of all, for the die cutting, same sandwich as before because we're die cutting, so that's always the same. You've got your base plate 1, your plate 2, your plate 3, and you put your cardstock down. And then I need to grab the die. So this is the whole thermos. I'm going to pull that out. But I just need the cap, but that's okay. You can die cut part of the image. Again, I'm reusing that same mounting tape again for this project. So I can go ahead and send that through. There is one thing I forgot, and that is to stamp my greeting. So I'll do that real quick so I can send that through the sandwich as well. So there's my cap part. So in this stamp set, there's also some greetings, and there's this teeny tiny get well soon. So cute, and it fits nicely inside a little label die that's in there. So I'm going to grab just a little scrap piece of vanilla cardstock. Right here. I'll stamp this quickly with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. Normally I would use a foam pad underneath it, but this is so little it should stamp fine. Yep. All right, so I want to show you something in this die set. It comes with 2 little tags like this. What I didn't realize at first is, I thought these were 2 identical tags because sometimes Stampin' Up! Sends in individual ones. But actually, one cuts out one solid tag and one cuts out the outline in the inside of the tag. Isn't that fun? So you could do it like this. That fits in there. You could do this in another contrast color if you wanted. But for our purposes, we're going to do the solid tag. And the difference is, I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, one has a raised inner edge around that rectangle. That's the one that cuts the inside rectangle and the outline at the same time. This one does the whole tag. So that's the one we're going to use for this project. So let me set these aside. And I already stamped that get well soon. So we'll put that in here. And it fits in this cute little teeny tiny die. Make sure we get that set in place and we'll send it through. And while I'm thinking about it, I told you I would show you what this was. This is the Post-it labeling and cover-up tape, it's called. So this is what I really like. You can just pull off and tear off a piece, whatever length you want. And again, I just reuse it again and again. I just place it on the handle on top of my machine so that I can use it again. So I've got my cute little get well soon that I'll put aside here. And then one last thing is I want to do the embossing. Now I need to change up my sandwich a bit. So I'm using a 3D embossing folder. There are regular embossing folders and there are 3D embossing folders. And it's an online exclusive. So if you go to my website or stampinup.com, they will have in the store a section called online exclusives. And those are products that aren't in the printed catalog. They only show up in the online store. And they are introduced, like when there's not a catalog release that month, the next month there would be an online exclusive. And they're around for, I don't know, an indeterminate amount of time. Sometimes they sell out and come back. So this is from a trio of embossing folders. I forget the name of it, but there are 3-pack of embossing folders. They have dots, I think a floral pattern, and then there's cross hatches. That's what we're using for this one. Because these are 3D folders, if you look at the picture and the description on the base plate, it'll tell you all you need is the base plate 1. Then you can put in your pieces of cardstock inside your embossing folder. And I can do both panels at once. They both will fit in there. Place that down. And then you're going to use, it's called Specialty Plate 2. Or, I'm sorry, Specialty Plate 4. Right there. So you just put that through. That's a very simple sandwich. Base plate, the embossing folder with your cardstock, and then that base plate 4 on top. Boom, voila. Now this feels like a tighter fit through your machine. That's so you can get more of that 3D effect. And if you can see, there's these wonderful textured kind of cross hatches on this one. So that would make a beautiful masculine card. This definitely has the masculine card feel to it. So let's bring our grid paper back in. Some of our other pieces and start getting this put together. All right, so the base part of our card is a piece of Very Vanilla, and this is kind of the standard size, which is 5.5 by 8.5. And normally you would score it at 4 1/4, but because it's a gatefold and we're folding 2 sides in, I'm going to score at 2 1/8 and 2 1/8. So I'll bring my paper cutter back in with its scoring blade and line that up at 2 1/8. Right there. And the easiest thing to do rather than figuring out how far over I need to go this way is just to flip it over and do it again from 2 1/8 from the other edge. Oh, I almost used the cutting blade. Don't do that. Okay. And again, I want to pull in my bone folder to help me get a nice crisp edge. It'll just lay flatter that way. So they come to meet each other like that. So they meet in the middle, that's the gatefold. Next up, I'm going to take my dry embossed pieces, and I'm going to adhere them to the front here. Now, when I do embossed cardstock, I like to use the Tombow Multi Mono Liquid Glue. It goes on white, but it dries clear. It dries pretty quickly, not instantly, but pretty quickly, and it's a strong adhesive. Now this helps me get in the little nicks and grooves of an embossing folder, because sometimes regular tape just doesn't hold it down very well because of the different dimension when you emboss it. So the trick is you don't want to have too much and have it ooze out the sides. I kind of just do lightly scribbling on it, like about that amount. Then I can flip it over and center it. And being a liquid glue, it gives you a little bit of positioning time before you need to lock it in straight. And then I just kind of burnish it to get it starting to set. And like I said, it does set up fairly quickly, so that's nice. So that should be good. Now let's put our other panel on, and again, kind of lightly scribble with some of the glue around here. And that should be plenty. The more you work with that liquid glue, the more feel you get for how much is enough and not too much on your project. And it's really pretty simple to use once you get the hang of how much to put on and how fast it comes out of the bottle and whatnot. It doesn't hardly ever like clog up this little spout. I just kind of go with my fingers like this and pull off any little extra amount and then shake it real good. Like this one's getting kind of low. Oops, I just spilled some out. And then it comes out real easily. So that's that. Now my hands are going to be very sticky. I'll just dab them on some scrap here. All right, so let's get going with the rest of the card. So now let's put our thermoses together. So I die cut the separate little pieces for the covers, and I'm just going to cut along that line where the cap is. And then I'm going to adhere that again with my liquid glue down on top of this pattern. And just place it right over the lines that one had. That's paper piecing. That's as simple as it gets. This is a really effective method. Like if you're doing, let's say you're doing an image of a lady in a skirt, you could do you could color in her top and then do a different pattern for her skirt. Or you could do a flower vase with a pattern and then have flowers coming out of it. I mean, just use your imagination and you'll come up with some fun stuff, I bet. And there you have your two thermoses. Okay, so now we need some squares. So I have already cut some squares ahead of time. This is Mossy Meadow, and this is Early Espresso. And I die cut one of the squares from that same die cut set that I used on the first project, the Stylish Shapes. It comes with squares and circles. It also has some labels in different sizes that look like this. So I highly recommend this die cut set. This is Stylish Shapes dies. Lots of versatility there. So this square is the one that's approximately 3 by 3 inches. Oh, it's 2 3/4, 2 3/4. And then I cut a piece of Early Espresso to back it, and I believe I cut that at 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. Yeah, so this one's going to give it about a 1/2 inch border around it. So let's go and I'll use my stamp and seal for that. Okay, that gives it a nice border. And then the Mossy Meadow, I think I cut that at 3 1/2 by 3 1/2. So that'll have a little 1/4 inch border around it. So we'll just center that. And next we're going to put our thermoses down. I'm going to put this one down first. I'm going to glue that. I just find that easy. Kind of give it a little jaunty tilt like this. And then we'll layer this one at another angle and maybe up a little. We'll go a little lower with this one off to the edge here. And then I'm going to take my Get Well Soon. I'm going to give it a little dimension. You could use, I think just one dimension, Stampin' Dimensional in the middle. Yeah, that'll be enough. And that's just going to go right in the center over those. So that's my main focal point. Now we're going to do the latching mechanism. So what I have here are 4 very vanilla 3 by 3 squares. Now there isn't any magic to this size square other than it will be hidden behind this main image. I'll show you a card when I'm done with this one where I did a rectangle, so I just cut my layering mechanism down to fit so it's hidden beneath that. So you just adjust it accordingly. But for this one, I have 4 3x3. So I'm going to take 2 of those squares and score them in half. So again, I'll bring in my paper cutter and use the score blade. So half of 3 is just 1 1/2. Score that. And take another one and do the same thing. 1 1/2. Okay. Then just fold it on the score line. Take your bone folder like that, and your bone folder like that. Okay. Next up, we're going to do some adhesive. Now, my adhesive of choice on this is the tear-in tape because it's a strong tape, and this will have a little bit of pull on it, so you want something that's not just your average adhesive. You want something that is a little stronger. So tear-in tape lives up to its name. You can just lay it down and tear it off where you need it. So do 2 strips the full length of your cardstock, and do that on the other side of the fold as well. 2 strips like that. I'm just making sure I'm burnishing the tape, meaning I'm smoothing it out on the cardstock so that it sticks to that bottom layer, because there is another piece that you're going to pull up, but you'll pull the whole tape up if you don't get it adhered down to that bottom layer first, if that makes sense. So we're going to do the very same thing to this scored piece and do a layer on this side of the fold line and on the edge like that. And then on the other side of this score line and along the edge. Now, if you didn't want to tear the tape, you could also just cut it. It just is very convenient to just tear it. Okay. And then I'm going to pull in my unscored pieces to put this mechanism together. So it's a very simple mechanism. So what I'm going to do is pull off one edge of the tape. Now, if you have like short nails or it's hard to do, you could also take your pick tool just to get an edge to help you pull that off. You could also take the pointy edge of scissors, and that could help do it too. I like to use the take your pick, but so only take it off, the adhesive off on one section at a time, because it'll be easier to work with that way. So I'm going to lay this down on the piece of unscored cardstock, or one of the pieces. So first I'll take, this is the stuff that I haven't peeled the adhesive back off yet, so I'm just going to lay that down to line up with that edge, and then adhere that down like this. Okay, so 1/2 of it is adhered like that. Now I want to point out, this doesn't have to be real pretty because this is going to be hidden underneath your focal point. So if it's not super straight or lined up exactly, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so we have this piece. Now let's take our other one that's unscored, pull this section of backing off the adhesive, and we'll do the same exact thing with this. I'm going to first lay down the part that the adhesive isn't pulled back off of yet, and then just layer it down in here. So now I have 2 pieces that look like this. So what I want to do next is take the piece that has adhesive like this and the other piece that has adhesive like this, and you basically want them to line up like this, so that the fold line here and the fold line here are going to meet. Okay, so all you need to do then is peel off the backing off this section. Okay, and adhere that down with the section here that doesn't have adhesive down, and that's next to the fold here and the adhesive here. So go ahead and get that lined up. And then this is the trickiest section because I still need to pull this back and get that adhesive backing off, but it's not that tricky. Again, I can take my take your pick tool in here and help me pull the backing off that way. Okay, adhere that down. And again, this has got a little wonky and it's not pretty, but we're not seeing this part, so don't need to worry about it. I'm going to trim this off in case any of the adhesive got over the edge, because I don't want that to get the stickiness to pull over. So now you're going to have, this is your locking mechanism. This is the way it looks like. Here's the folded edge and the folded edge meeting each other. So they form a kind of an X. And to put them on your card front, you just put one flap in that side and one in this side. Lay it flat, and this will slide up and down and form kind of a locking mechanism there. It'll slide up and down and pull it off like that. But I'm going to load it on here like this and then put my focal point over the top. So then to do that, I'm just going to take my adhesive, put it on my square, and then layer this over that. And there you have it. So now this can slide up and down, and it's very securely kind of locks it in. So you can pull it up like that to open your card, or put this back in. Again, you just need to kind of unfold these flaps, put it in there. Or like my husband said, normally when you get a card, you open it like this. Whoops, you open it like this. But you still can. You can still open it like that, and it'll come open. And there you have it. So that's the interlocking card. And then I'm going to show you one more sample of a card like that. This is the one I told you that I use as rectangles. This is our pansy dies. And again, this is still that wonderfully eclectic designer paper from our first card. It's just got a different look because it's different patterns. But I did I think it's deckled rectangle edge dies. So here's my locking mechanism again, only I made it smaller to fit and be hidden underneath the rectangles. So I've got that. You can lock it in place just like that. You can slide up and down, you can slide it off, or you could just open your card like you normally would. So that's there you have it. All right. So I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed those projects. Be sure to leave me a like and subscribe to my channel. This is a new channel. I've been a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator for over 20 years. I haven't been doing YouTube channels for a while, and I had another channel that I was doing those on, and I haven't done it for a while. So I'm hoping to get back into it and start fresh on this channel. So I hope you'll join me. And if you have any questions or want to know anything more about the Hybrid Stamp Club, let me know. Thanks for joining me. Bye.